All right. Hey guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it for today. This is one video in a series of videos on Algebra 1 worksheets and doing them and showing all the work for them and all of that stuff. So this is two-step inequalities. If you missed the last one, it was one-step inequalities. Shocker. So let's go ahead and look at what happens when we want to solve two-step inequalities and graph their solutions. Well, it's, like the name implies here, it's two steps, so it's going to take two things to get the x or whatever the letter is by itself. So let's move this 2x over. It's this thing right here. Let's move this over. Plus 4 greater than or equal to 24. And if you saw the last video, you don't necessarily have to know what the sign means. You just have to be careful to make it flip when it needs to flip. And whenever it comes time to put it on the line, you'll see a little trick that I'll show you that I also did in the last video. So whenever you're solving, you kind of do this thing that I like to call sad mep. So sad mep, and you're like, oh, maybe I haven't heard of that, but what does that maybe sound like familiar now that you're writing it? Looks kind of familiar maybe. It's because it's PEMDAS spelled backwards. PEMDAS spelled backwards is sad mep. And what does that mean? Well, it means that when you're solving, you want to try to start with adding or subtracting something on both sides, then dividing or multiplying something on both sides. And in order to do that, one, you try to identify the operation, right? So identify the operation, identify the operation. And then two, you want to do the opposite. Do the opposite. I definitely spelled it wrong, but it's fine. Opposite to both sides. It's really scratchy anyways, but do the opposite to both sides. So identify the operation, do the opposite to both sides, right? Well, let's figure out what's going on here. So we have a couple things going on here. We've got a 2x plus 4 greater than or equal to 24, and we want to subtract that on both sides. We want to subtract 4 on both sides. So how did I come to that conclusion? One, identify the operation. So there's actually two operations going on here. 2x means 2 times x. When you put a number and a letter right next to each other and there's no sign, no math symbol in between them, if you don't see a math symbol between two things, you assume you're multiplying. That's like an unspoken rule of mathematics. I'll say it again. If you don't see a sign between two things, two letters, two numbers, whatever, usually a letter and number, if you don't see a sign, you assume multiply. So 2x means 2 times x. The opposite of times is divide, but according to SADMEP, I want to try to subtract or add something to both sides first. So even though 2x means 2 times x, that is step 1, identify the operation, but it's too soon for that. I want to try to add or subtract something to both sides first. So I move on. Well, I also see right here, x plus 4. Right there is a little x plus 4. So if I see a little x plus 4, then, hey, the opposite of x plus 4, the opposite of plus 4, I should say, would be minus 4. So that's why I came to that conclusion of minus 4 on both sides. Okay. So minus 4, and I want to cross that out. So then 2x is left over here. 4 minus 4 is 0. So I don't need to write that. 24 minus 4 is 20. And then my next step. Okay, well, I already said earlier, 2x means 2 times x, and I'm done adding or subtracting stuff to both sides, because the only thing left is 2 times x. So 2 times x, okay, the opposite of times, yeah, it's divide. So I want to divide both sides by 2. Just like that. Goes away, and then x is greater than or equal to 10. X is greater than or equal to 10. That's now solved. Step 1 on the directions here, solve each inequality. Solved it. Done. And then we want to graph its solution. So this is the part where you want to make sure the numbers on the left, and again, we talked about this in the last video, so if you didn't see that last video, it's on one-step inequalities. Go check that out. because I'm not going to spend as much time talking about it in this video since I talked about it in great detail in the last video. So go check that out. At the end of this video, there is a link to that playlist, so you can skip to the end to grab that playlist. I'm probably not going to put it in the description, but there's going to be some other helpful things in the description, so if you want to check what's down there, go ahead. X greater than or equal to 10. If the letter is on the left, that's where it should be. If it's not, you got to flip it. Okay. Also, once the letter's on the left, if I do this right here, notice it makes a little right arrow. I just turned that greater than symbol into a right arrow. That means that at 10, there should be a right arrow. At 10, there should be a right arrow. And I know it's going to be a closed circle. I put a closed circle at 10 as opposed to an open circle. Okay, so closed versus open, closed. And this is open. Because it has the or equal to, this little bar right here. It has the or equal to bar. So I put a closed circle. If it does not have the or equal to bar, the equals bar thing, that's underneath the inequality. If it doesn't have that, then you put open circle. Okay. Sometimes you guys might do brackets or parentheses. Again, I talked about all this in the last video and in the video before. So go check that out if you want more details on how to do that. I'm just going to do closed and open circles on this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to number 2. M over 3 minus 3. I'm going to write it off to the side again. Less than or equal to negative 6. Okay. So we want to try to add or subtract something to both sides first. Let's see if I can get rid of, I did. Awesome. Okay, so I want to try to add or subtract something to both sides first. M over 3 means m divided by 3. Fractions are dividing. So I don't want to do that first because I want to do SADMEP, subtract or add something to both sides first. So I don't want to touch the 3 that the m is being divided by, but then it's being subtracted by 3, and the opposite of subtract 3 is to add 3. So I add 3 to both sides. M over 3 less than or equal to negative 3. Okay. Well, the m is being divided by 3, so if it's being divided by 3, I want to do the opposite, which is to multiply by 3. So I want to multiply both sides by 3. Multiply both sides by 3. And if I do, the 3's cancel. That's what I want to happen each time. So then m is less than or equal to negative 9. Negative 3 times positive 3. A negative times a positive is a negative. And 3 times 3 is 9. So then I'm at negative 9. It's going to be a closed circle because it has the bar underneath the sign. Here's negative 8, here's negative 10, so negative 9 is going to be right in between them. And the arrow should point to the left. The arrow should point to the left. And then just like that, I'm done. All right, we're going to switch colors. And if we come across something new, I'm going to talk about it more in depth, but as we go along, I'm not going to explain as in detail as I did on number 1 and number 2. So if you want more examples that are explained really well in detail, look for something new like what I'm about to do here for number 3 and number 4, where I have to distribute first. Versus look, towards other stuff, because I'm just going to kind of solve it, explain a little bit as I go, but not nearly as much in detail as what I did for number 1 and number 2. And that's kind of the trend that I do with each video. So number 3 and number 4. There's a couple little things we have to do with these that are a little different. They have parentheses. And if they have parentheses, then we want to try to do PEMDAS. And we want to try to do PEMDAS first because that is the order of operations. Technically it's the order of operations. So we want to, let me scroll up a little bit more here. Put PEMDAS here. We still want to do SADMEP, but PEMDAS comes first actually. So we didn't have to do any PEMDAS stuff in number 1 and number 2 because there wasn't anything to simplify. Simplifying is when you do something to one side of the equation at a time. Like number 3, I'm about to distribute that negative 3 into the parentheses. Well, when I do that, I'm not affecting the negative 18 at all. I'm not doing anything to negative 18. I'm just distributing the negative 3, and distributing is multiplying. So that would be the m in PEMDAS. Okay, it is a parentheses, but there's nothing to do inside the parentheses, and there's no exponents, so m is the first step here. So negative 3 times p is negative 3p. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Okay, and then I have this. Well, there's nothing to divide, add, or subtract in PEMDAS because there's only two terms on the left-hand side, and they're not like terms, so I can't combine them in any way. And there's only one term on the right-hand side. So no more PEMDAS stuff to do, but there is SADMAP. SADMAP, now we're going backwards. We want to try to add or subtract on both sides. PEMDAS, one side, SADMAP, both sides. Right? Notice negative 18 wasn't affected. That was PEMDAS. If I do something to both sides, then the negative 18 is going to be affected as well as the left-hand side. So I want to add 3 to both sides. Just like that. And I want to do that because it's minus 3, negative 3p minus 3. The opposite of minus 3 is to add 3. So that goes away. Negative 3p less than or equal to negative 15. Because whenever you have opposite signs, you subtract. 18 minus 3 is 15. But since 18 has a negative on it, the larger number takes the sign. Okay, that's one way to explain it. And I have a whole video on adding and subtracting integers. That's part of this series as well. So if you want to see that video, at the end of this video, if you stay to the end, you see that pop up for that playlist, and you can go check that out. Adding and subtracting negative numbers or integer numbers. It's labeled something like that. I forget what the exact title was of that video. But it's in that playlist, and that's pretty awesome, so go check that out. Integers can be kind of tough, so you have to be really careful. You can try number lines to help you out. You can try to just flip the signs, and then remember to flip them back. There's a lot of strategies for this, and I go over each of those strategies in that video. So if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. But this is one of the strategies that I show is just flip the signs, and then when you're done, you get the answer, flip the sign back. So that's one way you can do it, okay? Now, that we've gotten here, we just did, we added on both sides. That was add on both sides, that's SADMAP, the A in SADMAP. We want to try to divide or multiply on both sides. Now, this is the only thing, what I'm about to do is the only thing that's different between, let me create a little divide here so I don't get my 3 mixed in with my 5. The only thing that's different between inequalities and equations when you're solving them is that if you multiply or divide only, not adding or subtracting, not exponents, not anything else, when you multiply or divide only on both sides, so we're talking about the M or the D in SADMAP, when you do that and you multiply or divide by a negative, not by positive, by a negative, then you flip the sign, okay? So you might have heard that before, but it's only when you're multiplying or dividing, and it's only if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative. So there's a very, very small little scenario where this happens. It doesn't come up very often, but when it does, you have to remember to flip the sign. P, now this sign goes like this, right? So I'm going to flip it, and it's going to go like this, okay? Again, you don't necessarily have to know the difference between less than and greater than to be able to do this, but it is really nice to know. Okay, so it just flipped. It's now facing the other way. The mouth is pointing in the other direction. It went from less than to greater than. Still has the or equal to. That didn't change. And then a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And now I've got the answer. So P is greater than or equal to 5. Here's 5. It's going to be a closed circle, and greater than points to the right. A la derecha. Like so. Okay, let's do number 4, and I'm going to go a little bit faster as we go here, because if I go at the same pace, it's going to take a long time to get through all of this. And like I said before, I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to pick up the pace as I go here. So negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. Negative 4 times x is just minus 4x. Greater than 56. Okay, so I'm done with PEMDAS. I did the multiply step in PEMDAS. Now I want to add or subtract to both sides. This is technically minus here in the middle between them, but the minus belongs to the 4, not the 16, so it's kind of tricky, okay? This is kind of tricky, but you have to remember, in order to get rid of a number, you have to do the opposite of the number. 16 minus 4x is how it reads, but if I'm trying to get rid of 16, which I am, because if I want to get rid of the 4, I have to divide. The 4 is being multiplied by x, so I would have to divide it. The 16 is technically being added to x because the 4 has the minus, not the 16. This is kind of tricky, but that's a positive 16, not a negative 16. Since it's a positive 16, and it's not directly connected to the x like the 4 is, I'm actually going to subtract this from both sides. Okay? And it's going to be way more obvious if you have to multiply or divide it. If it's not being multiplied or divided, then you're going to want to add or subtract based on the sign of the number, not the sign in between two numbers or the number and the x. Okay? So be really careful with that. I want to subtract 16 on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Negative 4x greater than, and that's going to be 40. Okay, so again, I subtracted on both sides, but I didn't flip the sign because it's only when you divide or multiply by negative. Speaking of, I'm about to do that now. I need to divide both sides by a negative 4. So that means x needs to have the sign in between flipped. And then 40 divided by 4 is 10. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. So there's my answer. X is less than. Doesn't have the bar. This is the first one without the bar, by the way. So I'm going to put an open circle right here. Open circle. And the arrow goes this way. Okay. Doesn't have to be a super, super good open circle. It just needs to be pretty obvious that there's like nothing in between. If you kind of shade it in a lot, like, you know, nobody really cares too much if it looks like very shaded, as long as it has a noticeable gap in the middle of it, then you're fine. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. That's really all the teacher cares about, is just if they can see a gap in the middle, if it's hollow. So I wouldn't worry too much about trying to make it perfect. Just as long as, you know, if it's supposed to be a closed circle, just make sure it's filled in, like if you take a multiple choice test on a Scantron or whatever. And then if it's not, you just, you know, leave something in the middle. Okay? So just don't get too caught up in that. It's just minor details there. All right, 5 and 6. Well, the first thing I want to do here, there's nothing to do PEMDAS-wise, so I want to add 2 to both sides. Negative b, and I want to add 2 to both sides. 8 plus 2 is 10. So that's 10. And then I want to multiply or divide by a negative 1. It actually doesn't matter in this case whether I multiply or divide by negative 1. So I'm going to just divide by negative 1 maybe. Again, it doesn't really matter because it's 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. You're just trying to get rid of the sign. So then this is b less than negative 10. Okay. Strictly less than, which means the arrow points it to the left. Less than left. And I go on to the next one. Okay, so 6. I'm going to go 1, 2, just like that. So this is negative 12 minus 4n greater than negative 32. And I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So add 12, and I'm going to do minus 4n greater than negative 20. And then I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 4. Divide by negative 4 on both sides. So then n is going to be less than 5. I had to flip the sign. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then here we go. So less than goes this way. And there we go. So now that I've kind of gotten into stuff that's like none of this really looks that different. Number 12 looks a little different, so I'll spend some time on that. But as you're going here, you're more than welcome to play it at like, 1.5 or double speed or whatever. If that is helpful to you as you go through these problems here and see what the solutions are. And I also really encourage you to, right before I get to a problem that you've been stuck on, like let's say you've already tried to work out some of the stuff on this worksheet and you're stuck on a problem, fast forward until I'm just about to work it out, and see if you can, just give it one more shot, like see if you can work it out. And then if not, just, watch me go through and do the problem and then see if you can figure out what you did from there. What you can also do is if you think the answer would help to backtrack, then you can actually look up this worksheet. You can Google it. It's just one Google click away. You just Google two-step inequalities, maybe throw the word Kuta in there, Kuta, and it'll come right up. And then you can look up the answer and kind of work your way backwards from the answer if you need to, if that's helpful. So I won't be offended if you double speed or if you skip forward to a problem that you're stuck on. If you need to do that, go ahead. But I'm going to go ahead and continue with number 7 here. So I would want to subtract 4 on both sides first. Okay, so subtract 4 on both sides. N over 3 less than 2. And then since I'm dividing by 3, I want to multiply by 3. I want to do the opposite. So then I get n is less than 6. Notice the sign didn't change because I multiplied both sides by a positive 3. It's only when you divide or multiply by a negative. So I have 6, open circle at 6, and I want to go less than, which is to the left. Let's get it down. Okay, next I have distributing first, okay, which is technically PEMDAS, because the 0 is going to be unaffected there. Negative 3r plus 12 greater than or equal to 0. Then I want to subtract 12 from both sides. So subtract 12, negative 3r greater than or equal to negative 12. And then I would want to divide both sides by negative 3. I kind of ran out of space there again. So I'm going to do, this is just going to be r. I'm going to have to flip because I have to divide both sides by a negative 3. And negative divided by negative is a positive. Right? So negative divided by negative is a positive. It's going to be a positive number. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so I go to 4, fill it in. Less than goes to the left. And there we go. All right, next. So here we want to subtract 7 on both sides. Subtract 7, negative 7x less than or equal to 49. And then I want to divide both sides by negative 7. I have to flip the sign because I'm dividing by a negative. And I get negative 7. Greater than this time because I had to flip the sign. Which means it's going to go to the right. Wait, hold on. Did I do something wrong? Oh, I didn't see the negative. Okay. I made a boo-boo. I didn't see the negative sign on the 56. It's like, hold up. This thing is not giving me the negative 7 that I was looking for because that wasn't the answer. So I caught my mistake here, and it, that happens sometimes. So just kind of goes to show you that anybody can make a mistake. You just got to be able to find it before you submit your test or quiz. It's okay to make mistakes on the homework. Make mistakes all the time. I mean, unless, it's being graded, but I really don't think homework should be graded. So anyways, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, so 63, which divides by negative 7 still, because negative 56 divided by 7. So negative 63 divided by negative 7. Again, negative divided by negative is a positive. 63 divided by 7 is going to be 9. Still going to be going to the right. And so I'm going to shade in right here. And it's going to go this way to the right. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, always check your work if it's a test or a quiz. This is why, like when I was in school, I would always take up all of my time. Just that way I could just go back and check all my work and work out all the problems again, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And lo and behold, I'd always have, 1 or 2 things that I'd be like, oh, yeah, I forgot, to do something there. And I'd catch it right before I put it in to be submitted for a grade and then got a really good score. So always helps to go back and check your work. Nobody's perfect. Some people are, just naturally more gifted or naturally better at not making mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes, actually. You just got to be able to catch them. You just got to be able to go back and catch your mistakes. So here we go. Goes to the left. And that was it. I had to flip the sign because I'm dividing by a negative, but 0 divided by anything is 0. So that's why that ended up being the way that was. And also, if I make a mistake, and I don't catch it, let me know in the comments because I definitely want to fix that. It's definitely possible that I would make a mistake and not catch it because I don't check my work when I do these sorts of things here. Just because for the sake of the video, I just go through and I just work them out and then I just show what the answers are. For harder stuff, like when I'm doing Calc 1, 2, or 3 videos, then I would probably check my work a little more. But for stuff like this, I normally don't just because I have a lot of experience doing it. Not that I don't make mistakes, because I did just earlier, but usually really minor things like forgetting there was a negative sign or something. Okay, so that's going to be negative 11, and look at that. That divides out perfectly. That becomes x. I have to flip the sign, and then it's a 1, so it's going to go right here. Go that way. And there we go. Number 12 is a little different. So earlier we talked about sad mep. There's another thing called sad meg, like a sad megalodon. And I like sad meg better, and I like GEMDAS better because G stands for grouping. There's a lot of groupings. Parentheses is a type of grouping, but there's a lot of different groupings out there. Technically, absolute value is a grouping. It's similar to a parentheses, but it has a little extra kick to it because it makes the number positive if it wasn't already. So for number 12, I need to do that because there's a grouping. What's on the top is technically being grouped. I can wrap a parentheses around it just to show you what's going on here, but technically if you have a bar, if you have that big old fraction bar in between, then everything on the top and everything on the bottom is being grouped. So I can put a parentheses around it to show you that it's all being grouped, and since it has a parentheses on it now, because I know it's being grouped, I want to deal with that last. I want to deal with that last because I want to be able to try to add or subtract, do anything on the top and the bottom first, and then try to divide. But I can't do any PEMDAS type stuff. I'm going to have to do SADMAP stuff. Okay, so negative 9 plus a, I would try to add 9 to both sides first, normally, because that would be a in SADMEG. But I'm actually going to multiply by 15 on both sides first because negative 9 plus a is wrapped up in a parentheses. Until I get rid of that parentheses, I have to deal with stuff that doesn't really need to be wrapped up in a parentheses. This 15 doesn't need to be wrapped up in a parentheses. The negative 9 plus a does. So I'm going to get rid of the 15 first, actually. When I do that, I get negative 9 plus a less than 15. Now I don't need a parentheses there. I technically needed to have negative 9 plus a grouped, and it was grouped by that fraction bar thing. Now it's not, so now I've kind of broken into the G in SADMEG. So I did multiply on both sides. Then I got to the G. I kind of broke into this grouping. I got inside the parentheses. And now I start off with SADMEG all over again, kind of like in PEMDAS where you start with the parentheses, and when you need to go inside a parentheses, you have to do PEMDAS all over again. You have to say, okay, well, is there another parentheses? Is there exponents? Is there multiplying? Is there dividing? Is there adding? Is there subtracting? Anything like that. So we want to add to both sides. So I want to add 9 to both sides. So I go plus 9, a greater than 15 plus 9 is going to be 24. A is greater than 24, so I'm going to have 24 right here, and then I'm going to go greater than goes to the right, and I have just like that, and I go on to the next one. All right, so I have, let's go here, and again, I have this 21 thing, so I want to multiply both sides by 21, and I go like this, and I have the 21, so I have negative 21 right here, less than or equal to v minus 2, and then I add 2 to both sides, add 2 to both sides, negative 19, less than or equal to v, and now I've got the v on the wrong side, so I want to flip the v over. I'm going to have to flip it and read it backwards, and I talked about this more in detail in the last video, so go check that out on why I can go from this to this, but you can. You can do that, and there's an algebraic way why, but it just kind of makes more sense to just kind of read it backwards and just flip the whole thing around. So v, and I'm going to go to the right now, and it's going to be at negative 19, which is right here, and it's going to the right. And now I'm on 14. Okay, so I want to distribute first. 12n plus 108, and I have negative 132 here, 108. I'm going to subtract 108 on both sides. 12n, and I'm going to add those up. So I get 4, and that's a 2. And then, look, that's going to go in pretty nicely, actually. So I'm going to divide both sides by 12. 24 divides by 12 2 times. That's going to be 20, so I get negative 20 less than n. But I need to flip it because n is not on the left, so I need to flip it, and now it's going to be this. And so now I have 20. 20 is right here. And I go less than goes to the left. And I go on to the next problem. So 15 here, I got 15 on both sides, 15, 15, negative 11 plus n, less than negative 15. Multiply both sides by 15, not negative 15, so I don't need to flip the sign, and then I'm going to add 11 to both sides. So I have n less than negative 4, and then I go like this. All right, cool. Done with that. On to the next one. So negative 90 greater than or equal to negative 5k plus 15, and minus 15 on both sides. So then I'm going to go like this, negative 5k greater than or equal to, mark there, and then that's going to be a negative 105. Now I want to divide both sides by negative 5. Okay. And there's actually a couple of different ways you could do that. That's why I paused for a second, but I don't know if I'm going to show you both ways because I don't know if it's necessary. Yeah, because we're almost done here. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you're curious what that second method was that I was thinking about showing you. But I don't think I'm going to show you in this video. If there's another video similar to this, I'll maybe show you a second method. But we're just going to divide by that negative 5 there. That's going to go in. How many times would that go in? 21 times? Yeah, looks like 21 times. Because 7, 3, 35, yeah. So 21. Okay, so 21. And I have to flip the sign because I divided by a negative. And I need to flip the k around. So 21 is right here. It's going to go to the right. And I go like that. Okay, cool. So next up, we have the orange, like a deep, deep orange here. This is n over 7. Not the whole thing is being divided, so I'm not going to, multiply first like I did earlier. I'm just going to subtract 1 on both sides. I don't have a grouping here. This is 3 less than n over 7. I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. So then I have 21, but I need to flip it around so that the n is on the left-hand side. So I have to flip the sign as well. And 21 is right here. And this is going to go to the right. Just like that. Okay. This one does have the bar over the whole thing. You see the difference between 17 and 18? 17 is being divided by 7, but only the n is being divided by 7. Versus in number 18, everything's being divided by 4. So I have to do that first before I can get to the other stuff. So negative 4 greater than 12 plus x minus x, and then negative 16. X is going to be less than negative 16. There we go. So less than goes this way. And there you have it. All right, next. 19, 20, 21, 22. I think we have 6 more here. All right, so we're rounding off the end here. And notice I have been going a little bit faster. I told you about this earlier. If I've been going a little too fast, if you're having trouble following along, just let me know in the comments, and in a future video if there's a, maybe I'll start off with that problem, that particular problem that you were maybe stuck on or whatever, or I can respond back to you in the comments letting you know exactly how that solution would play out and, maybe clear up any confusion you have. So just let me know anytime in the comments if there was something that I went a little too fast on, but sometimes I'll just go a little bit faster on something because I've explained it in detail in another video, especially like this when it's part of a series of videos on Algebra 1 stuff. So anyways, 19, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Add 1 to both sides, so 7n greater than. I'm going to actually be subtracting here, so this is negative 168. And then I want to divide by 7. I'm assuming that goes in evenly. I don't know for sure, but it looks like it would. 7 goes into 16 2 times without going over. 14, 2, 28, that goes in 4 times. And it's going to be negative because I'm dividing a negative by a positive. So there we go, negative 24. And it's going to the right. It's going this way. All right, so here we want to add 5 to both sides. Add 5, negative 4b greater than negative 20. Divide both sides by negative 4. B is going to be less than positive 5. Here's 5. Less than goes left, or you can do the little arrow, and there we go. Okay. So next we're going to do some distributing first. Distributing is PEMDAS, remember, so we want to do that first before we try to solve. You could technically divide both sides by negative 7 here first, if you view it as like a grouping instead of as distributing. So you can actually do it either way. There's not like a strict rule here on which one is better, just whichever one comes to mind. If the 7 doesn't divide evenly into the 84, then, definitely distribute first, but you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room here if you think of a different way to do it, and that's totally fine. Or you can just stick to your guns, so to speak. Negative 7v plus 63. So then I'm going to subtract 63 on both sides. Okay, so that's going to be 21 is 7v. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 7. I'm going to actually do the other method that I mentioned earlier. So I could divide both sides by negative 7, but then since the v is on the right, I'd have to move it anyways and flip it around. So what I can do actually is if I do this instead, if I add 7v to both sides, then I would get 7v plus 21 is greater than or equal to 0. Then I could just subtract 21 on both sides. And maybe this seems like it takes a little longer, so if it does, then stick with what I've already been doing. But if you do it this way, you don't have to try to flip the sign at all. I didn't need to flip the sign. Because what would have happened is if I divided both sides by a negative, by the negative 7, I would get v solved for, but then I'd have to flip the sign because I divided by a negative. Then I'd have to move the v over to the left and flip the sign again. So it'd be back where I started. So if you have a negative variable on the right-hand side, it might be easier. I mean, if you think flipping the sign twice is going to throw you off, it might be easier to just do what I just did here. Okay, so close circle at negative 3. It's going to the right. Okay, here I want to multiply both sides by 2. Okay, I'm going to multiply by 2, multiply by 2. So then the 2's cancel there, and I have negative 8 plus r greater than negative 16. Then I'm going to add 8 to both sides here, and I have r greater than negative 8. Here's negative 8, open circle, greater than goes to the right. All right, last two. Here we go. And we're going to do rounding back over to a different shade of purple here. We want to add 8 to both sides first. Okay, so x over negative 6 less than or equal to negative 12 plus 8. So that's going to be subtracting, so that's going to be negative 4. And then I want to multiply both sides by negative 6. Okay, since I'm multiplying both sides by negative, I need to flip the sign. And a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 6 is 24. And 24 is right here. I'm going to do a closed circle because that has the bar, and greater than goes to the right. All right, here I want to multiply both sides by 2. Multiply by 2, multiply by 2. M minus 3 less than or equal to 10. And then I want to add 3 to both sides. So then m is less than or equal to 13. Here's 13. closed circle, I want to go to the left. And there we go. Okay, so that was it for this video. Here are the answers. And again, if I missed something, let me know in the comments. It is possible, so give 10 points to whatever your Hogwarts house is if you can find a mistake. 10 points to Gryffindor. But yeah, so check it out. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If anything was awesome, let me know. If you didn't like something, let me know. If you hate the sound of my voice, if you think I sound too raspy or something, let me know. And I will see you guys in another episode real soon. Toodaloo.